With me today, I've got Barb, and we're going to be talking about content marketing. Now, I know lots of people have spoken about content marketing, and it's been well discussed. But today, it's going to be different because we're going to talk about it. That content marketing is bigger than we think it is.
Hmm.
We are. So, Barb, tell people where they can get hold of you.
Best place to find me is on LinkedIn, Barb Mosher Zinck, and I'm also on Twitter, and I'm on Facebook, but I'm actually one of those lurkers that just keeps up with family.
Right.
Yeah,
But the best place to get you is LinkedIn,
yeah,
and it's Barb Mosher Zinck.
right.
Yeah. So Barb, to get into this, why don't you give us a little bit of your background and how you got to where you are today? Because you used to write for CMSWire and you still write for pretty serious publications. So tell us how you got into that and how you have become a writer of such note.
Yeah. Well, thank you. So Cliff Notes. I actually started out in IT. I have a marketing degree. Didn't know what I wanted to do with it, so I went back and took an IT course and spent 10 years helping create computer systems and applications for companies, and didn't want to do that forever. So decided I was going to switch over to do some writing, and I started as just an occasional writer for CMSWire, and eventually earned my way up to becoming their editorial director. And I
Right.
did that for probably 5 or 6 years. And then I said, I want to actually work for companies now that do this kind of marketing stuff, talk about content management systems, and actually do the marketing for them and the writing. So I started left CMSWire, started taking on clients. And so I do that. That is kind of what my primary living is, working with other companies, software companies primarily. But then I also have a regular column on a site called diginomica.com, where they give me free reign to write about everything related to marketing, technology, sales, tech, the strategies, the technology, all that wonderful stuff. And I definitely love doing that too.
Hmm. And I think the writing is I didn't know until I wrote my first book about the creative outlets that it actually gives you.
Yeah, I wish that I spent more time creatively writing outside of work, but that kind of takes up all of my time. But I really try to find when I'm writing to find the real stories behind what I'm trying to talk about, and not just be really stilted tech talk kind of conversation.
Hmm.
So and when I do my Diginomica stuff, I really like talking to just about anybody who works in a company that knows how their products work and what's going on in the industries, that can kind of share their insights.
So content marketing. Surely it's
Yeah.
just about brochures, isn't it? We're just going to create some brochures and maybe a white paper. We'll get a marketing agency to write a white paper, 2,000 words, stick them on the website, and job done, isn't it?
Oh, sure. If you want to just, put out content for the sake of putting out content that doesn't really mean anything to most people. But no, it's so much more than that. And I think it's more than what even some people give it credit for. Like, I mean, there's product marketing and there's content marketing. I don't think there's a difference between the two of them anymore. I do think the two of them blend together, and you're going to create kind of a content strategy that creates all different types of content around customer journeys or audience journeys, and where and how they look at things and want to look at things or need to look at things to understand how to do their jobs better. So I don't like people kind of bucketing and saying, you go over there and you write your white papers and your blogs, and you go over here and you write your data sheets and your customer stories. I think it should all blend together.
So you said something in there, which I think I want to pull out, which is you mentioned content strategy.
Hmm.
What do you mean by that?
I think, again, that's a term that means different things to different people.
Yes.
I don't call it a content marketing strategy. I call it a content strategy,
Right.
and it's for the whole company, and it's an understanding of who you're trying to reach, who is your target audience, whether it's customers or just people that you want to help influence the people that you want to be your
It could
customers.
be, I mean, just to play devil's advocate, it could be trying to reach out to future employees.
Yes, absolutely. We often don't think about the employee experience when we write about content marketing strategies or content strategies. And yeah, if you want great employees to come work for you, you want them to know that you know what you're doing and you're trying to do something more than just sell a product.
Yeah.
So because that, I think people like to have a bigger reason for joining you. But yeah, so it's just documenting all of that stuff. What kind of content you write depends on partly on the buyer's journey, but partly on the strategies and what's going on in the industry. So you kind of have to marry it all together and then have a strategy of what you're trying to do. And that includes customers as well. We think that once you win a customer, pass it over to customer support, and we don't think about that kind of content, but all of that content helps win customers as well as keep customers.
Because I think in the IT industry has changed. Certainly, when you and I would have joined the IT industry,
Yeah.
the major thing would have been on premise.
Yeah.
And then what happened was that cloud came along and upset all that, and now we're in the situation where most things are are cloud based. So you've got this annuity revenue every year, and even the contract that may come up every year or every 3 years or every 5 years. So you've got this this customer renewal situation going on. So a lot of IT companies have shifted to have this customer service department, which they didn't really have before, to make sure that they get the renewal.
Yeah, and that department kind of is supposed to pay attention to how their customers are using the application. I think that's a hugely important thing for marketing to understand as well. How are they using it, and how can we create content to help them use it even better, or use more of it, or continue to use it, instead of them saying, "Yeah, we bought it, we paid for it for a year, we're getting like 30% use out of it. Let's chuck it and try something different."
Mm.
Like, content is so critical to keeping those people on.
Because I mean, one of the things that I learned, you know, in certainly in cloud, was that because of this renewal, all of the competition would know when the renewals are coming up, and there would be this, you know, 6 months before the renewal come up, all the competition are basically phoning up saying, "So you got a renewal coming up?"
Yeah. Yeah. And companies aren't tied to products anymore
Yeah.
because it's so easy to get into a new SaaS product that you really have to think about what do you need to do to get them to stay with you, because you might be the greatest product in the world, but if you're not making your customers happy, and content, in my opinion, is a huge part of that, they'll go, who cares? I can just,
Yeah.
export my content out and put it in, or my data out and put it into some other system. It's a piece of
Mm.
cake. Maybe not
Yeah,
these.
one of our clients had had the Eloqua email system, and they said that they weren't getting a response from it, so they went out and bought whatever the Salesforce one is,
Yeah.
and it was like, well, these are major investments that you're making here. Of course, when they bought the Salesforce one, they weren't getting any response from the email either, because it wasn't the system that was at fault. It was the fact that nobody opens emails anymore. But you know, there is this thing, the fact that my point being is that you can just go out and get another one.
Yeah.
Because as a buyer, I just see there's how many? There's a Martech 5,000. I just see 5,000 companies that are exactly the same.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's slight issues where it's not always easy to switch, especially if you're an enterprise company tied into enterprise systems that are customized, and that's a tricky thing. But I just think it's way too easy to switch over. Yeah, and 11,000 Martech products applications right now that you can choose from. They're not all the same, but there's a
No.
lot of options out there.
So Tara has said, content is king. If you want to attract top talent into your organization, win customers, keep current customers, and develop your team's culture, one of the best things you should do is, as a company, is to create content that speaks to people.
Yeah.
And the bit that didn't come up is do something different. Just share company updates or products, share company stories, and develop a content strategy. So
Yeah.
on that, how do I develop a content strategy, Barb?
You have to start talking to the people that you want that know who your audience is you're trying to reach, who are the customers. So it's not just marketing. Marketing has to talk with sales, has to talk with customer support, has to talk with product management, and it has to come down from the CEO. I think really, who are we selling this product to? Who is it we want to buy our product? And then you start to look at them a little more closely and understand, where are they? What are they doing? What are the challenges they're trying to use your product to solve? And even not use your product to solve, if you can help them build a strategy that's bigger than your product, but your product is part of that, that's a really great way to win customers. So you just have to map it out. You have to map it out, and then remember that it's not always, from one stage to the other, that nice linear customer journey, but people kind of go in and out of it. And you have to just plan your content to be wherever you think your customers are going to be.
Is this about having an ideal customer persona or criteria?
The ideal customer profile. Yeah. I mean, it's an ideal customer profile, and it's an ideal audience profile, because you're not just trying to win customers, you're trying to get in front of people who influence your customers as well. So not everybody buys your product, but a lot of people will like your content and like what you're saying and get it and understand that you get it. And they'll start recommending you to people who are looking for your product.
Yeah, and I think that there's far more of that. I mean, there's lots of those sites. G2, isn't it? Which is the site run for based on customer endorsements.
Yeah, that's customer. Yeah.
Yeah. So what type of content do you think that what type of content do you think people should be looking for if they've got a strategy? What should they be looking for in terms of the building within that strategy?
You mean in terms of content formats or content itself?
The content itself.
Well, I love customer stories. I think if you've got customers who are willing to talk about their business and their challenges, and how and then in part how your product helps them resolve some of those challenges, customer stories are great. I think if you can write content around the strategies that the company the product supports, then that's stuff people are looking for, because everybody's trying to figure out, how do I do my job better? And if you can create content that just speaks to how you can do the strategies and the processes better, they're going to keep coming back to you for more and more. And eventually, if they are looking to buy, they're going to look at your product a lot closer, because you obviously know what you're talking about with my industry and my work. So your product must be supporting that in some way. Right?
You're
So
demonstrating expertise in effect, aren't you?
Yeah. And not just in what the product can do, but the whole bigger picture of this.
Yeah, it's about understand. It's saying it's not just about the product does this, which is classic feature and benefit, but the product does this in oil and gas.
Yeah.
Or in life, these are the solutions. This is how we solve this business issue in life sciences.
Yeah, exactly. I think to me, that's the best content to create.
So I've got a note down here about paid media.
Mm-hmm.
So content versus paid media. Why would I go down the content? Why would I not just buy my way into the marketplace with paid media?
Well, to do paid media, you need content. So it's not like there's no content is part of paid media. You have to actually get people to come to your site to see something. But I also think that a lot of people aren't paying attention to what's going on in paid media anymore, because the pitches and the copywriting is just not speaking to what they're trying to achieve. Most people, a lot of companies just put out, come buy my product. My product's the best in the world. And people don't see that. They don't care about that. They want to know, what is it you do, or how can you explain to me that your product, your work is better than what I want? So I've got lots of companies that have tried to put lots of money into Google, lots of money into LinkedIn ads, and just not seen the results that they would have maybe seen, 3-5 years ago.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of that is down to the fact that I don't know whether it's we've become more cynical, or the fact that there's actually more and more. I mean, Oracle say that we get hit with 10,000 messages a day.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you may have an ad that's you know, you've taken supermodels off to the Atlas Mountains and got the best photography. You've got the best copywriters in the world, but you're just still one of 10,000.
Yeah. It's too easy to get lost in the pile. And I sat in on a webinar yesterday where the speaker was talking about making your ads more fun. And yeah, if there's a way that you can create your advertising that pops and stands out, then you've got a strong chance of getting people to kind of pay attention and want to know more about you. But usually that's all content too. Like, it's all about how you tell the story, what are you telling people that makes them want to come look at you.
So we've got a strategy, and we've got content. How are we going to get that out to people? I mean, one of my clients said that the days of throwing content at strangers is over. She said that to me 3 years ago. I mean, is that something that you would agree with?
Yeah, well, yeah, I agree. It was probably over 5 years ago.
Well, I would have said 5 years ago. Yeah.
But everybody still does it, right? I mean, it's still pitch it out. Hopefully someone that is important to you will see it. So you have to think distribution. It's not just create the content and hope people are going to come. It's how do you distribute it? And to distribute it, you need to know where are your customers and your audience spending their time. And that helps you understand the format of the content you want to put out to them. And then it helps you understand where do you need to be, and not just maybe you want to put ads there. I'm not saying don't do advertising at all, but I think in most cases, what you really want to do is get your employees talking about you, talking about the content that you're creating and sharing their own content. So it's kind of an influencer kind of model from an employee perspective. And just being there, you have to be there. You have to share it.
I mean, it was Rand Fishkin that said that before you write content, you needed to be able to distribute it first.
Yeah.
And I still think that's the case, that you need to have some sort of distribution model. So picking up on employees, when we talked before, you said that employees need to have a solid presence. And I'm trying to read my own writing, and something about reach. Explain.
Yeah, so you can create a really great company page on LinkedIn, and you can share all this great posts, content, share all this content, but it's only getting out to the people that follow your page. The best way to really develop your presence on LinkedIn and help distribute your content is to get your employees to talk about it for you, because they are connected to tons and tons of people who are then connected to tons and tons of people, right? So that's the way you get to build reach on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. I think you need to let your employees develop a voice that is their voice, kind of follow some brand, there's got to be some brand rules that you follow, but it's their voice, and they're kind of advocating on behalf of the company and their stories and everything. That's where you got to go.
Yeah, I often liken it to, I work for companies where they say, here's the diversity and inclusion training, and here's the health and safety training. But there's never any social media training, because with diversity and inclusion, there's handrails that you can, if you can reach out to. The same with health and safety. There's this, there's an ability to, where you can go and where you can't, you can't step out of there, but I can step in here. But people don't seem to be doing that within social media, and that's so critical, I would have thought, today.
Yeah, and I mean, there are companies that are doing it. I've seen some, and I've talked to some, and there are products that you can use that help you bring your employees in and show them how to create that. And then it's become part of their job description that they have to have a presence and they have to kind of talk and share. And I think I think it's good to make it part of your job description and also help them figure out how to do that the right way. There are companies that are doing it, and the chief evangelist role is becoming pretty darn popular. I've noticed bringing like one employee who really speaks for the ideas of the company, but also speaks as their own kind of person. And I think those are really good people to have in your company if you can afford to have one.
Yeah, there was a guy in I think it was PwC, Mike, and I can't remember his surname, but he began with a Q. I've not seen him around for a while. But I used to track his reach on social media,
Right.
and he used to have more reach than the whole of PwC, all of the brands put together.
Yeah. And that's what you
And
want, right?
that's yeah, and the thing is not to be afraid of that as a
No.
brand, because quite often brands, as soon as somebody gets puts their head above the parapet in terms of being on social media, the brand then shuts them down.
Yeah. I years ago when I was in IT, I was a consultant and I would, get farmed out to companies to work. And my view was always if I do a really, really good job and people like me, they're gonna like my company. And
Yeah.
I just think that translates into what we do today online is if you're really good at what you do and you speak and you have the vision and the stories, people look at you and then they look, well, where do you work? And then it kind of just streams from there.
So is there anything else that I've missed, Barb, at all in terms of the content strategy?
The only other thing is, when you think about formats, everybody wants to do a podcast, everybody wants to do a white paper. It's do what works for your customers, do what works for the people you're trying to reach, and test and play and try things and always be willing to kind of try and fail and try something different. I think we get too stuck on a 1,000-word blog post or a 30-minute podcast, but you have to think really carefully about how you want it to work, but then play and try things and just change it up if it doesn't work for you.
And I think what you said there, Barb, is so important. That it's about the culture of experimentation.
Yeah.
Of we're going to try it. Okay, it didn't work. We'll do something else. But at least we tried, and we're not going to get fired for it. And I think that's so critical, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think sometimes management has to remember that some things are a long game.
Yep.
So you can do a podcast for 6 months that gets no traction,
Yep.
but that's not very long to do a podcast.
It isn't. No.
So you've got to go longer and kind of really figure out how you're tracking it and what's the value of it. And it may not be that you can have hard metrics against it, but you can figure out soft metrics and things that people will say, well, I saw your podcast, right? So you have to look at it from both hard and soft metrics and make sure that you're giving it the time it needs.
And I think so. I mean, what we find is different people consume different types of content. Some people will read the written word, some people won't.
Yeah.
And some people will watch a 3-minute video. Some people won't watch anything over like 30 seconds or a minute.
Yeah.
So there's that. When in formats, it's also about making sure that you're providing the right format in that sense to the different people, and different people, as I say, consume different content.
Yeah, and it's not that you have to create a unique piece of content for every format and everything people like. A 30-minute podcast gives you tons of written content, social posts, clips up the yin yang, right? Like you can get lots of clips out of a podcast, whether they're audio or video if you're doing a video one. So you can take one piece of content and make dozens of other pieces from it.
Barb, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your insight. There's so much about content marketing, and I think personally, I think it's constantly evolving. I think it's changed. We started the business we're now in our 7th year, and I think it's changed certainly in the last 7 years, and will continue to change because the buyer will become more particular about what they see and hear and watch.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and thanks for inviting me. I love talking about this stuff. It's really cool.
No worries. And Barb, remind people where they can get hold of you.
Best place is LinkedIn. So Barb Mosher Zinck on LinkedIn. And then I also have a website, BMZ Content Strategies. It's a long name. It's on my LinkedIn profile.
Perfect. And thank you so much again for coming on today. I know the 20 minutes goes very, very quickly. I appreciate you coming on and talking about content. It's been amazing. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. And thank you, Tara, for your